G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of Wine Back Wednesday, and today I'm going to taste the third wine in the Smidge Wines trilogy, that's what it is, the SWT, Smidge Wines trilogy, no, but it is actually the Smidge Wine trial. We did a hand-picked a little bit of Shiraz from the estate here last year in 2023, and we picked it reasonably early and destemmed it all, and then did a control and a couple of trials, treatments of different percentages of rachis or stems in the fermenters. So if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we did the 25% inclusion, and before that we did the control, so I had no stems at all. All it was just a stem fruit, and we've gone from that wine, which was sort of a fresh red fruit, crunchy, acid and really lively, and then a couple of weeks ago with a 25% in conclusion, we sort of had that lovely fresh fruit as well, but then there was another dimension to it. Had the tannin sort of started earlier in the wine and was kicked out, and the fruit and the length was a lot more pronounced than the control, and also it seemed to have a bit of a darker fruit spectrum as well, as along with that sort of red fruit spectrum, so it's more sort of purple and plummy sort of elements as well. But today, the third and final wine we're going to look at is 50% inclusion, so a reasonably high proportion of stalks, 50%. So we had about, in each of the fermenters was about 220 kilos, I think, off the top of my head, and so I literally had the stems of equivalent of about 100 or so tonnes. So it was quite a bit of it, and we put them all back, just to refresh your memory. Over the years when I was working in the Adelaide Hills when we did Pinot Noir, we had quite a number of ferments every year had inclusions of stalks, and we started using whole bunches, so the stems and the stalk and the berries are all intact, but over time we started changing around and actually destemming them and putting the stalks back in independently, and we found that those results were more consistent and better overall. So that's where it's come from, and so we're putting the stems in for this as well, so 50%, and we're giving it a go. So without further ado, it's again sort of lovely dark, sort of some nice red fruits and dark sort of core as well, but there's a sort of magenta sort of rim there. But the fruit's quite dark in the spectrum. It's there's a bit of red fruits there, but there is a darker fruit spectrum as well there. And underlying in the background, there is sort of a stemmy sappiness to it, but it seems as though it's actually less pronounced than 25% from memory. And I think I said once before that 1 + 1 rarely equals 2 in the wine industry, particularly when you're tasting wines, and it can equal +5 or -5. So often things are very synergistic, or they can be actually sort of fighting each other and actually suppress some of the characters you think that may be present in the wine. And I'm not saying that they're suppressing it, but it seems as though there is less intensity here. So whether the stems are there present, but it seems as though the stems, from what I can remember from the 25%, the stems are just as pronounced in this one, but the fruit seems to be a bit suppressed. So maybe I suspect that stem and stalk character is dominating a little bit. But overall, it's actually quite fresh, clean, and crunchy. You can sort of funny me saying it's a crunchy smell, because obviously crunchy is more of a taste sensation, or an organal. It's more of a when you're eating something that's sort of crunchy. But it smells crisp. It smells crunchy. It smells lively. It smells It's like when I suppose you walk into a greengrocer and you can just sort of smell the veggies and everything. And if they are all fresh and clean and tasty, and well, they smell like that, they smell fresh and they smell as though they've just been brought in, as opposed to the fruit and veg has been sitting on the shelf for a few days, and obviously the smell would be slightly different and less fresh. This is what I'm smelling here. Quite interesting. The tannins are present, but unlike the 25%, which the fruit was quite pronounced, and then the tannin sort of came in early, and the whole thing just ran and was long and really luscious and getting on driving. Whereas this one, tannins are present, but it really is quite closed and really tightens up the whole palate. And the fruit and the tannins actually are finish quite abruptly, about sort of 2/3 of the way through. They sort of suck up. So I suspect that this one will need some time before it starts opening up on the palate. But looking back on all three of them, vastly different. As I said, from the control, the 0% stalks, sort of red fruits, crunchy acid, really just fleshy and juicy and easy drinking and fun. The 25% captures that sort of elements as well, but also adds another layer of the tannins start a bit earlier on the palate and really drive through, and the fruit spectrum looks a bit darker. And whereas this one, the nose has stalks and sappiness there, and there's a few more layers coming through, and that sort of red to dark fruit spectrum there. The purple fruit, as on the 25%, doesn't seem to exist in this one. It's more black and red and quite suppressed in some ways. And then on the palate, red fruits with a bit of a dark spectrum, but the tannins are quite mouth-filling, and then it just, it's quite abrupt. Finishes clean and even, but finishes quickly, about 2/3 of the way along. So stark difference between the three wines. The trial was successful in that regard, and to be honest, I've tasted them all on different days, so my mindset is going to be a little bit different. But to be honest, I think I'm veering, I suppose the 25% at the moment is probably a more complete wine, not discounting the qualities and attributes of the other two, but the 25% is probably the most interesting and most complete at this point in time. So there we go. There was the last wine in the Smidge Wine Trial Trilogy. It should be SWT, shouldn't it? But yeah, so we had the zip control early on, 25% last time, and now we're trying the 50% stalks. Thanks for listening. Speak to you soon. Cheers.